Hey, what's going on, everyone? Sometimes you just can't, find the time to prepare a decent edited video. Sometimes you just gotta grab some games and hit record with whatever jank setup you can. So I apologize for the camera quality and the video and all this stuff. My setup at the moment is horrendous, but obviously a loss happened. And of course, I want to give my own thoughts on the recent Microsoft and Activision Blizzard acquisition. But for me, this is something I've always struggled with, personally. And just forgive me here, because all I'm going to do is talk. If I could live stream, this would be better as a live stream, because then I could talk and interact. This is just going to be a me talking, and whatever flows out is just from my previous experience working in games retail, from being in games for so long, and just things coming off the top of my head that I just know that I learned through all these years. If I get some things wrong, I apologize. I'm going off memories here that could be 20, 25 years old, trying to think back to this stuff. But anyway, I was having to think about this. When was the first time I felt an impact, essentially in the industry, myself, especially when it came to like exclusives or acquisitions, and things of that nature. Because at the end of the day, these things have been going on, for a long time. Now, I could easily go back, to when I had my Sega Saturn, for the Christmas of 1996, and I remember going into the video game stores. And all people, were talking about was the PlayStation 1. The PlayStation 1 had already destroyed, the Saturn, pretty much, in terms of, media, popularity and interest in 1997, 1996, 1997. It was already, a major thing. Now, for me, because I was a Saturn owner, as many might know, one of the first games, I got from my Saturn was the original Tomb Raider. A lot of people forget that the original Tomb Raider was developed first for the Sega Saturn by Core Interactive. Core Design, I'm sorry. Now, this game made me buy my Sega Saturn. But when I first felt a bit of a ping, when it came to exclusives, was arguably this wasn't the first time. This game came out in 1997, Tomb Raider 2, and by this time we knew then that Tomb Raider, even though it launched first on the Sega Saturn, it was no longer now coming to the Sega Saturn. Tomb Raider 2 was coming to the PlayStation 1. Sony had pretty much paid for exclusive rights to the Tomb Raider series until later on when Sega finally got Tomb Raider back on the Sega Dreamcast later on with Tomb Raider Revelations, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Revelations, which was the fourth Tomb Raider game. So Tomb Raider 2 and 3 were essentially exclusive to the PlayStation. And, I remembered all this. I was gutted that Tomb Raider 2 wasn't coming to the Sega Saturn because I loved my Saturn. But by 1997, I'd started working in Electronics Boutique, which is a video game store. That's my first proper job, essentially. And I was obviously, me and my love for gaming, I was really getting into it. And what made me buy the PlayStation 1, and I'm always going to bring these games up, were these three games: Parappa the Rapper, Abe's Odyssey, Oddworld, and Final Fantasy 7. Now, obviously, Final Fantasy 7 was, that big game, and a lot of people, this was more linked to Nintendo than Sega and everything else. But a lot of people forget that this was the first Final Fantasy game released in the UK ever. Before then, we never had a single Final Fantasy, unless you count the Game Boy games, which were, named different, essentially in the UK. So I had no attachment in 1997 to the Final Fantasy series. But what I did know is that Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, was also planned to release on the Sega Saturn, but that didn't come to pass. I just heard about it. I was like, man, this game looks fantastic. I'll get it. Seen it on the PlayStation. Knew then it wasn't coming to the PlayStation 1. I was like, oh, this is going to be exclusive to the PlayStation 1. It's another reason to get a PlayStation 1, I guess, because follow the games, right? And then from Sony themselves, we had Parappa the Rapper. I've seen this demoed in game, all in capital letters, Game, game, was a retail store and still is in the UK. Talk about acquisitions there. My God, they swallowed up Electronics Boutique and Game Station, 2 other game shops I used to work for. That was high school. That was a high street massacre right there. Anyway, exclusive PS1 game, made by Sony, Japan, and I just had to get this game. You saw the demo to the shop. It was just amazing, fantastic. But this was the time where I was like, right, you're starting to notice these types of exclusives that, were once on other platforms or planned to come to other platforms, going over to other companies and stuff. And, it was a bit weird. And, talking about, and those early days with Sony and stuff, a lot of people, think about Wipeout when it comes to the PlayStation brand. Now for me, of course, I was working in Electronics Boutique at the time. This came out earlier, but when Wipeout was huge, I was working in EB. But Wipeout also came to the Sega Saturn. A lot of people don't realize that Sega Saturn. And as you can see, the developer here, or the developer and publisher, was Psygnosis. Psygnosis were a multi-platform publisher, before Sony snapped them up. And Psygnosis arguably shot the PlayStation 1 into fame, along with obviously a core design, because of the Tomb Raider franchise and stuff. But Psygnosis, Wipeout, you can't underestimate how big Wipeout was for the PlayStation brand. It was absolutely huge. And Psygnosis, I forgot to bring it on. I've got some games here. I just grabbed it. I was just going to talk. But Psygnosis were also famed for, one of the biggest games, arguably the biggest game ever, was Lemmings. Lemmings was huge. Psygnosis were a massive British studio, absolutely huge, all over the place, multi-platform, until they ran into some problems then because Sony partly owned them, and Sony were about to drop them. But then terms became better. Some staff left it over, but eventually Sony bought him, and you end up then continuing the Wipeout series. I got Wipeout 3, and Wipeout 3 is great on the PlayStation 1. But Psygnosis were also doing other big games on the PlayStation 1. The Destruction Derby, once again the first game on the Sega Saturn, early published by Psygnosis. I promise I'm going to talk about Microsoft in a moment, I promise you. Destruction Derby 2, and other games like G Police and Colony Wars, just to name a few. And for me, as another Sega Saturn fan, they publish games like the Discworld series, it came on PlayStation 1 as well and PC, but it just goes to show where Psygnosis were at the time in terms of the type of games that they were publishing, developing, and across the platforms that they were doing it. So you start, I think it was from 1997 when I really started paying attention and getting involved and both falling in love and actually in a way not hating, but starting to see the darker side of the gaming industry come into place, especially since the start of the PS1 era when Sony came in. And as I always say, Sony were effectively not a video game company. They were a big corporate media company in that respect, for their music and their hardware and blah blah. We all know those stories about Sony. No need to go into that. But yeah, you see other people. It's like for example, we got as we know now, Rockstar, right? But before they were Rockstar, they were DMA Design, and a lot of people forget how big the original GTA was. It was absolutely huge. This collector's edition came out, at a later date, much later, which is why it's got the art on there and stuff. But DMA Design, before they were Rockstar, were DMA Design, and they were doing other things, working with Nintendo, I'm working against Nintendo as we know about these games, but you get Body Harvest and Silicon Valley, to name a few. But you look at DMA Design today, they don't exist. Essentially they were once Take-Two had bought them out, they became Rockstar North, and since then they have pretty much only made Grand Theft Auto games compared to what they do in it. Wait, I said Psygnosis. Psygnosis published Lemons. It was DMA Design that developed the original Lemons. Like I said, my memories just this is going off the top of my head. Memories. Yeah. But yeah, but DMA Design, another British studio, bought out by a bigger publisher. No longer independent by themselves. They are effectively bought out. So if someone bought Take-Two, that's another British company, and DMA Design, gone to another American company or whatever. It's you see these acquisitions start flowing in from bigger publishers, console manufacturers, like Sony and stuff. And this is when like I said, I started getting into the game industry and seeing these trends, and I didn't like it, because at the time, I was still a massive Sega fan, and as we know, Sega had to leave the console generation because people were already interested in the PlayStation 2 before they even knew what the PlayStation 2 looked like or what games they might get or anything. The Dreamcast was out, but people ignored it. They wanted the PlayStation 2 because the PS1 had become so popular, and the Saturn had failed, unfortunately so miserably by it was essentially dead by 1998. But I was working in another video game store. It was an independent video game store called the Software Store, and that's when the original Xbox launched. Now I've got Edge magazine in front of me here, because this issue is from 2000. But I was reading Edge magazine back in 99, late 98, I think I first started reading it, and this was a full-on industry magazine. And I kind of stopped reading in general video game magazines. I was just more interested in the wider industry. And you see crazy designs like this. This is like an artist's impression of what the PS2 might look like, stuff like that. But you can even go back to these early things. I tell you, look at this. N64 emulation, trials on PC. This issue is from March 1999. People going crazy over emulation, already. And even an issue. Oh, there we go. Sony jumps in as Psygnosis shakes down, and you can read from here. Like I said, this camera quality is terrible. I apologize. But it says Sony Computer Entertainment has announced that it's effectively taken control of video game development at Psygnosis. Psygnosis ran into a few issues with some of the games that they released. Or they got names like Rascal and Blast Radius and Formula 198 and stuff. And those sales were pretty poor in those games. Then Sony finally stepped in and took over. There were creative issues. Many of the Psygnosis people wanted to stay independent, but hey, Sony took them over, bought them up, and as we know right now, Psygnosis, Sony, they completely closed down, shut them down. These are the guys who made Wipeout, Destruction Derby, all these games, published Lemons, all this stuff. Shut them down. And I know recently as well now that they said they've the name Psygnosis, the trademark for that name now has been reestablished or something. Whatever happens with that, I don't know, but like I said, that was another big British acquisition back then. And being in the UK, you see a lot of these British studios getting snapped up. It's quite incredible how many British studios have been effectively taken over by big publishers or big corporations. It's quite staggering. We got but let me jump onto Microsoft now, right? Because Microsoft became popular with the original Xbox. You can see here, and obviously the game that shot them into the stratosphere. Without this, would they have even succeeded at all? That generation is the argument. But regardless, they got their console the killer app on the console, Halo. I bought my original Xbox because of this game, like many other people. But this is, this game is by Bungie, right? And when we think of Bungie, we always think Microsoft. But like I said, I've been gaming for a long time, and I was PC gaming, well before the original Xbox came out. And a lot of people haven't played, some early Bungie games, which back then, as you can see, this is from Windows 95. Gosh, yeah, Windows 95. But yeah, Myth 2. I love this game. I used to play it, and an absolute crap ton, back then. But this was a Bungie game. Before Bungie, anyone really knew Bungie. And even though, even back then, sometimes I would look at games like this, and I would still not pay too much attention to the companies. But once they start getting more popular, you go, oh yeah, that was this person. That was Bungie. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, that's cool. You got this stuff. But anyway, Halo, Bungie no longer at the Xbox, right? They left because Microsoft, all Microsoft wanted to do was to create Halo games, and Bungie had effectively had enough. They wanted to do other stuff, but because Halo was a Microsoft killer app at that time, this was it. But if you actually think about it, it's pretty crazy, right? How Microsoft could let go the company that effectively made them, that effectively made the Xbox. Obviously they kept the IP, and they're not going to let Halo go. They, themselves, of course, they kept the IP, and they've had three studios working on it since then with a mixed reception. But yeah, it's crazy how they could let them go, right? This one developer who made the original Xbox gone. But that's how many of these big companies work. It's if something doesn't work for a while, there's no essential change of direction or try something new, which some of them ask for. It's out the door. And we saw that with here we go. We saw that with Brute Force. I'm not sitting here saying Brute Force was the most amazing Xbox original game ever made, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. And this game was done by Digital Anvil. Right? And Digital Anvil were bought out by Microsoft, but before they were bought out by Microsoft, they were making other games. Now, a lot of people might know Chris Roberts recently, because he's basically trying to make the most ambitious space sim ever, which is Star Citizen. But yeah, this is from Chris Roberts, creator of Wing Commander and Privateer. Now, if you know about Wing Commander and Privateer in the PC gaming space, that was big. But here we are, published by Microsoft, Star Lancer. Now, Star Lancer also came on the Sega Dreamcast. Yeah, but it had to be published by some other people, Ubisoft, stuff like that. Right? But Star Lancer, I absolutely loved. This was a Microsoft published game, but from Digital Anvil. And Digital Anvil went on to make a spiritual successor to Star Lancer, which is Freelancer. But after this game, effectively, Microsoft bought out Digital Anvil and released Brute Force. Right? And then after a while of little success, Digital Anvil got closed down by Microsoft. But once again, we're talking about British developers here, right? That's actually not British developers, I apologize. But we're talking about a developer here of such pedigree, effectively bought up by a big corporation and closed down. And I'm not just picking on Microsoft here. Everyone's effectively involved in this, but we're talking about Microsoft here because they just done the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. And when I was looking at other stuff, we could talk about. I didn't bring any rare games downstairs. Oops. But we're talking about Lionhead Studios. Now, Lionhead Studios were would effectively get a splinter off. God, my brain. Bullfrog, right? Bullfrog, who done Theme Park, Black and White, Theme Hospital, and a ton of other influential games by Peter Molyneux. But after a while, Fable started being unsuccessful. Blame Peter Molyneux, blame whatever. But effectively, Lionhead Studios themselves, get out the door. No good, right? Microsoft closed them down. And Bullfrog was actually bought by Electronic Arts. And, let's not talk about what EA have done with Bullfrog's IPs. Which those are other dark days of a massive publisher buying these, a British studio, actually, Bullfrog, there we go, and effectively doing crap all with them and just running them into the ground. Yes, like I said, the industry is just rife with these acquisitions, and Microsoft jumped into the console market with other stuff like the Oddworld games. Now, I was a huge Oddworld fan, as you know, that is showed by the original PlayStation 1. And, going off the title of this Edge magazine, how Microsoft created this PlayStation 2 killer. These were the mindsets back then, And Microsoft, not just with, trying to buy, Nintendo or Nintendo IPs, like Rare and stuff like that, or going after Sega. And there was other stuff that, that they went after, whether it's PlayStation stuff, like Oddworld and stuff like that. It's, that the competition and buying out of IPs and studios and stuff like that was rife, absolutely rife back then. And it continued to be. And what, I think one thing that didn't, really cross my mind until, a good few years ago was how many of these studios now, these once AAA studios, have all effectively fallen under the banner of maybe 5 large, big Western publishers. And whether these publishers are big mega corporations loosely connected to video games but own consoles now, so they are part of video games with those divisions, or whether they were once just publishers to begin with, who effectively became bigger and bigger because they had snapped up all these studios and all this talent and all these developers. What we started to notice now is that effectively most of the early talent and great talent of the industry is underneath so many fixed umbrellas, and that's a worrying prospect, for me. I've been, if I just grab Diablo 2 here, Blizzard. I've been a Blizzard fan since Warcraft, Orcs and Humans. Effectively, actually, we were talking about before that with Rock and Roll Racing and all that stuff. Since the SNES. But Blizzard for me really became that company, and I remember saying, in terms of, they didn't have the same amount of output, but in terms of quality of IP and consistency, Blizzard almost pretty much came second, maybe third to Nintendo for me. They were just that company, and I can't tell you how much these games mean to me. And I've also got, just brought downstairs just a few games, the original StarCraft, old big box PC. Everyone remembers this stuff. There's these, oh my god, these were the size of a PC games back then. DV case to give you a bit of comparison there. But I've been a fan of Blizzard for a long time, and I was one of those people who were there for the original release of the World of Warcraft. I was actually on the beta for this when it first before they even released, and this game was just as earth shattering as it became known to be. World of Warcraft was just on another level, absolute another level, and that game took absolute years of my life. No regrets whatsoever. But as we know now, Blizzard are part of Microsoft. They are part of Xbox. Blizzard, part of Xbox, is a crazy one to let sink in, really. But what I'm not mad at the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. we learned later on that that this company was a shell of its former self. It's not like I've been a huge fan of Activision, throughout the years. I think they peaked after the once the PS1 generation was done, and during the PS2 and 3 generation, then they primarily mostly went towards just like movie stuff and license stuff, and but still, luckily, then the old sprinkle stuff like Guitar Hero, or like during the PlayStation 1 era, we had Tenchu Stealth Assassins, which is one of my favorite PS1 games. But I'm not effectively mad at it, because I've had to tell myself now, after all these years, one of my biggest problems is my love for the industry itself, and I don't just mean the video games. I'm talking about the developers. I'm talking about how the creativity of the industry, and this doesn't mean that the creativity will go away. That doesn't mean at all. We got these indie developers. We still got great third-party studios out there. Doing some good stuff. But for me, obviously, it's a far cry from going back to these days, and and all this stuff that I've shown. It doesn't mean that creativity is going away. It's I've had to tell myself to stop caring about the industry, because I got too attached at one point, and I think I just need to tell myself now that we're in the realms of where I was always scared that we go since the PlayStation 1 came onto the scene. We're now in the realms of the mega corporations, and even though Microsoft were loosely somewhat connected to the gaming on Windows PC, even though they back then, before 1999 or 2000, Microsoft games were primarily stuff like Microsoft Golf or Flight Simulator, these Solitaire, these types of PC types of games and experiences. And it wasn't until 1999 and 2000, which is probably when they started working on this Xbox, that they started looking at game studios and publishing more of what we call general video games, rolling, like Freelancer, Starlancer, even though those are space sims a bit, but Brute Force and Halo and stuff like that. That's when it really started for them. But like I said, I've had to tell myself to stop caring about the industry, because now we're in the realms of the mega corporations. There is nothing, absolutely nothing we can do as consumers to stop where the industry is going to go now. But effectively, we could blame ourselves. As I always blamed gamers, for the death of the Dreamcast. Sega actually being a video game company, kicked out of the console market for Sony and Microsoft instead. And I always rant about how people call the Xbox the Dreamcast 2. It's like, no, the Xbox was not the Dreamcast was the Xbox was not the Dreamcast 2. Yeah, the Xbox just got what the Dreamcast had planned and would have got. You know what I mean? If Dreamcast was just given 2 or 3 more years. Yeah, you have to remember the Dreamcast lasted 2 years, man. 2 years on the marketplace. It's disgusting, isn't it? Absolutely disgusting. But yeah, the Xbox, the GameCube, and the PS2 effectively got what the Dreamcast probably would have got if it was a bit more successful. But it's I blame gamers, but at the end of the day, you gotta blame Sega as well. But anyway, without going into that, like I said, I can't care about the industry, because now with this acquisition of, was it $68.7 billion dollars in cash, I hear there was. I mean, how do you have that amount of money in cash? I can't even get into my head how that worked. I don't get it. But I'm not talking. I don't know. But it's now in those realms. The video game industry, as big as it is, that amount of money is beyond what we knew as video games. Nintendo couldn't afford that amount of money. Sony couldn't afford that amount of money. Activision Blizzard, couldn't afford that amount of money. EA couldn't afford that one. It's gone beyond what the video game industry and its biggest players could do. It's gone way beyond it. There is no competition in video games for that amount of money. So what we have now effectively is the realms of the mega corporations, and we are talking about the Microsofts and the Googles and the Facebooks and maybe the Tencents and stuff. It's a different realm now, and I'm not going into my thoughts on why Microsoft done this. I think when you fork out that amount of cash, it's more than an attack on Sony, or more than an attack of or more of the mindset that we effectively don't aren't great at making games ourselves. We just have to buy these studios, much like Sony did, even though Sony had their own internal studio once, who they got rid of, which was Sony Japan. They have these companies have to buy these developers. It costs more money to create your own studios and build up your own staff and try to create your new IPs than buying someone else. And when you buy companies like this, like Blizzard Entertainment, it's mental. Absolutely mental. What I'm going to struggle with myself is getting out of that mindset of stopping to care about gaming industry and just saying to myself, go back to that mentality where you first started with Sony, but then quickly went into the industry mode of follow the games. That's what I used to do, and that's what I kind of still do now, even though I didn't buy the Xbox One. That was the first major console I never bought in God knows how long. And right now I just can't bring myself to buy a Series X or a PS5 because still right now those exclusives, those enticing exclusives just aren't there for me. Let's see what happens with these shooter acquisitions. I see people talk about wanting games to certain games to return. I just go to Rare. People saying, yeah, we're going to get a new Crash Bandicoot, we're going to get new Spyro. Well, we had a new Crash Bandicoot recently, and we had the Spyro collection, and stuff. But with Microsoft, people have been asking for the new Banjo-Kazooie. For a long time, people have been asking for a new Conker, and we're finally getting Perfect Dark. Let's see how that turns out. But from Rare themselves, their IPs is this another British studio, gone from the UK. The gaming industry that I grew up in is gone. The players are still there, but they're all over the shop. Some have left. Some have tried to branch off, form their own studios, or like Platonic Games, who have now been bought out by Tencent. What can you do in these worlds? What can you do in this gaming world now? You have to stop caring. I suppose you kind of have to stop caring and just play the games. I think my only worry was, I don't, as the word monopoly has been thrown around a bit. I threw it around a bit. It's not just Microsoft creating this monopoly. At the end of the day, we've seen the industry become consolidated, into, some key players, and even these key players are clearly not as powerful as they thought they were when Microsoft can just drop 70 billion, a price which blows away the total net of all these companies. These companies must have thought, my God, we're nothing. Absolutely nothing in the realms of when Microsoft themselves get involved, not the Xbox division. Even though this is Phil Spencer, doing all the talking, wanting to get this money, from Microsoft. Microsoft obviously, doing this for for bigger reasons, beyond, beyond Nintendo and Sony now, well beyond. They're playing a different game now, and it's just one that video games can't follow. The video game companies that we knew right now, they can't follow it. And I was, my mind straight went into, well, if they could do this, when we look at companies like Capcom and Square and stuff like that, how many AAA studios are still independent without being tied to a big mega corporation? Not many at all. Not many at all. If someone bought Square Enix, it's in the name there. It's no longer Squaresoft now. It's Square Enix. That's not just far fancy and everything gone. That's Tomb Raider. And all that stuff. Underneath that umbrella. So if they were bought out, there goes those IPs. Just to one person. And it's the discussion of, do we want just one console to rule them all? No, thank you. No, thank you. But yeah. Anyway, my God, like this is what happens when I just sit here and I just waffle. And just waffle. I'll end it here. So, what are your thoughts, people? Clearly a lot of people are excited about this, with Game Pass and all this stuff coming out day and date. All this stuff, just let me know your thoughts. I thought it was just important just to get some thoughts out. These are not my complete thoughts, but I thought it was important just to get some out. But yeah, leave your comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone. Peace.